obviously toxic online content. And so what are we talking about? We're talking about content that's defined as that is false, threatening, misleading, violent, or overly sexual. And it can be easy for teens to be exposed to this troubling content, which is upsetting, dangerous, and can dismantle a teen's trust in other people. Unfortunately, it can serve as a divider. And how do kids access this? It happens through algorithms, right, which recommend content based on user characteristics and viewing patterns. And it's possible that your teen has come across online content that doesn't match your family's values. And there's examples here, right? Like a teen seeking videos about fitness can find themselves suddenly getting videos suggested to them about disordered eating. Part of the algorithm. I think it's also really sad and horrible that a teenager who's seeking dating advice may then find that the algorithm begins suggesting videos with misogynistic, hate-filled messaging about women and girls. This is happening, and it's so easy for these things to happen so innocuously, for our teenagers to find themselves there. And finally, toxic masculinity, which is one of the things that, we said we would talk about tonight, because this is really at the heart of adolescence. And just so we're clear on what it means, it's a collection of offensive, harmful beliefs, tendencies, and behaviors that are rooted in traditional male roles, but taken to an extreme. And I think it's really important to note that they are rooted in traditional male roles. Toxic masculinity existed far before, and this is why I have it on the bottom, online content. This is not new. It's been around. And we all feed into it in different ways, which we'll talk about. But it is this dangerous idea of manliness, right, that perpetuates domination, homophobia, and aggression, and can be harmful to the mental health of all genders, not just male. It can also have some serious social consequences. Many definitions of toxic masculinity appear in research as well as pop culture, but it's defined by like three core ideas. One of them is toughness, right? That men should be physically strong, emotionally callous, and behaviorally aggressive. There's anti-femininity is a big part of it. So men should reject traditionally feminine behaviors such as showing emotion and accepting help. Men should be powerful, right? So they should work towards obtaining power and status, both socially and financially. So they're always like out to get respect in those ways. And it really promotes unhealthy habits. One of them being this stigma and this idea that seeking out health support for healthcare is not manly, which includes mental health as well. Heavy drinking can be part of it also. So what do we do? What do we do about toxic masculinity? Because again, we do play a role in it. It is a socially constructed thing. So we need to think about what our role has been in it. And it's in the relationships that we have. Obviously, if you feel like your kiddo is exhibiting toxic masculine behaviors, they can talk to a mental health professional, because it is really about breaking from these unhealthy patterns and dangerous behaviors and harmful beliefs. But one of the biggest things is not training our young men and boys to suppress their emotions. We don't want to ever make our men, period, feel as if they cannot feel things. That is a very dangerous place to put people mentally. And we need to stop feeding into stereotypes and binaries, right? So we need to stop saying things like boys will be boys. I don't, what does that even mean? Um, it's an excuse often for bad behavior. It's a pass a lot of times. It sounds cute, but it isn't. Boys are like this, girls are like this is another one. That's such a man thing to do. That's how boys are. Man up, don't be a sissy. These are all things that sound, um, you know, uh, that are innocuous, but they're not. They're sending messages that boys get to be one way, and we're not doing them any favors with this, and girls get to be another way, and we're setting up this negative binary. Never mind the people that don't identify as one or the other, but we are setting young people up. We also vote in people who have horrendous records with misogyny, but we ignore it because we think, oh, well, hopefully they'll, I don't know, keep our city or our country safe, whatever the reason is. But that's a message, right? Like to the highest power, we excuse toxic male behavior. And those are big messages that our young people are getting. And it's something to talk to them about. Um, it's important to talk through, it's why it's important to talk through your values with your kiddos and where they come from. And things like toxic masculinity come from what are called echo chambers, right? Which is from algorithms. You kind of like start to go down this spiral. It's a rabbit hole, right, of information. Once you start getting once the algorithm starts working to send you negative messages, um, it starts sending you more and more extreme things. And who among us haven't clicked on those things, right? Like I fall for it too. I do. Something, some crazy joke comes into my, feed. I'm like, oh, what's that? And I'm like, oh God, well, why did I click on that? But at least I know what it is. But I think a lot of kids, and particularly people who are lonely, are seeking acceptance, validation for their feelings maybe of rejection. It's much easier for them to fall prey to that stuff and to keep clicking and to keep thinking, oh, that's kind of funny, right? Let's put somebody else down, right? I think it's important to name the different ways that cyberbullying happens. It is name calling, it is spreading false rumors, it is sending explicit messages, both real and of the fake AI generated variety. It is physical threats, it is being heavily surveilled, meaning people are keeping track of you and posting about it online, right? That's not something that's just for the paparazzi anymore. Like anybody can take a snapshot and post and be like, oh, I saw so and so here. And soon everybody knows where you are, what you're doing, and making a big deal about it. Having explicit images shared without your consent is a big one. And it's something that not enough kids, I think, are privy to, how dangerous that is to both have it happen to them, but also to do it to other people, right? Like, we should always ask to take people's photos. We shouldn't just take photos of people without asking their permission, and we definitely should not just share them. That stuff goes wide, and especially if it's not a nice photo. Not that we have to have the best photos of ourselves all the time, everywhere, but it's very different if you are in on the joke, like, oh yeah, that's a bad one. Right? As opposed to having somebody take something of you and then share it without your permission. And it's important to talk to our kids about that. I think it's always important to think about all the things that comprise sexual violence. Sexual violence is defined as anything gender, sexuality related, orientation related. And these are all the ways that sexual violence happens. It is misogyny, misandry. Misandry we never talk about. It is like misogyny is hate of women, misandry is hate of men. We don't even talk about that, right? And that's part of the toxic masculinity. It's like, oh, how could we even hate men? But we hate them with the way that we treat them and the things that we teach them. Um, Sexual violence includes homophobia, transphobia, LGBTQ bashing. It is street harassment. It is not just rape. Any way that you dehumanize someone sexually is violence. So sexual harassment counts as that. And I think it's really important that we know that we equate those things and that we help our young people to know. Um, Screen time. Oh, yeah, these numbers, it is, we should see them though. We got to look at them, right? Like that's a lot of time. The average teen spends 7 hours and 22 minutes looking at screens every day. That can include school time. But American teens' screen time has increased by 2 hours in the last 10 years. That's a lot. US teens spend about 3 hours longer on screens than US tweens. So just, the difference that a couple of years makes is huge. Teenage boys, people who identify as male, clock up to nearly 1 hour more daily screen time than US young people who identify as girls. Teenagers spend more than 3 hours per day watching videos and TV. So it's obviously not all school-based, but it's really important for us to recognize this and what we're dealing with. And the big question is, what can parents and caregivers do? And the answer is a lot, actually. Here's a good list for us. Talking often. Much like sex ed conversations, it's not the talk, it's not a talk, it is talking, being in communication with our young people, asking them questions, being interested, keeping the lines of conversation, communication open. And there's just too much to cover in one talk. Don't put it all on one talk. It's many. To me, that makes it seem, I think, more doable. Like you can do less over many conversations, as opposed to putting all the pressure onto one. Um, it's not as much about what you say, but how. And I really want you to take this one in. Your job is to not be perfect when you're having these conversations. Your job is to be open and to be there and let your kids know that you're there and that you will talk to them and you will talk things through. Um, and there's different ways to do this. It's hard not to just react, right? It's hard not to be like, oh my God, really? But sometimes admitting that you're embarrassed, admitting that you don't know the answer is a really human, good thing to put in the middle of these conversations. Let me look that up. Or, to the embarrassed part, like copping to like being a little embarrassed to like talk about this stuff with them because maybe you didn't talk about this stuff with your parents, right? Did you? I didn't that much. Every once in a while, it was usually like over an acute situation. Um, so we don't always all have the language that allows us to feel comfortable having these things, but it's okay. It's okay. It's just more important that you have the conversation. It can be awkward. It can be funny too to be awkward with your kid. So think about it, try to think about it that way. And you definitely want to lead the conversation with curiosity rather than fear, which helps in a lot of ways. Thinking through um, that you're not there to judge them. You're not there when either they come to you with a question or you encounter them maybe watching something that you really don't like or don't understand. Asking them first why, like why is this of interest to you? How did you learn about this? Why are you watching this? And not in an interrogation, not accusatory. Don't make assumptions either about why they're watching things. Somebody sent it to them, somebody told them about it. They're curious. So it's really good, and which is normal. And so it's really good to ask them, have them explain it to you. I just want to know. Mentoring versus simply monitoring. So like there's lots of ways to monitor and it actually is a good thing to monitor. But you also want to mentor. Um, and just again, by being in conversation, and not interrogations. So you want to talk like you're not lecturing or judging, and you definitely don't want to make your kiddo feel like they're in trouble. One of the biggest fears, one of the biggest barriers for kids coming to their parents about things that they're seeing online is the fear that they'll get their devices taken away from them. That is a huge fear, and it does make kids not report things. And that's not a place that you want to be with your kids. You don't want them to have that threat hanging over them. Sometimes those punishments are necessary, but it shouldn't be about because they're reporting things to you. Opportunities, not threats, right? We want to be there when our kids are coming to us. So if your child or teen has come across some troubling content, avoid blaming them and lean into teaching them why this sort of content is problematic. Explaining that influencers' main motivations for content creation is money, and it's attention and power, right? And that this can stimulate influencers to create content that is untrue or toxic. Teach them what they're feeding into when they click on these things. You definitely want to you want to be honest about your concerns, share facts, and definitely share your values. You also might want to be open to the fact that your kids might not share your values after a certain point, but at least talk to them about where they're at with things, why you believe certain things, and ask them why they believe certain things. They like to be asked questions. Um, and you definitely want to get a handle on what they're consuming and how. I have recommendations in a resource that I'm going to share with you about parental controls. Screen time is an important one. It's hard to do after the age of 13 or 14, but it's something to think about. But you should know what they're consuming. You should have an idea of the things that they're watching and listening to. You want to be in community, or at least think of the fact that you're in community and not alone. One way to do this is just talk to the parents of the other kids in your life. One, because so you feel not alone, but also if your kid's spending time with another family who has different rules around media, you want to know that. You also want to know how they handle things, but also be able to have the conversation with your kid, like, okay, if you're over at Johnny's house, like things are different over there. It's different when you come home. Or be on the lookout for things and behavior changes when they come back if they've seen things that they wouldn't have seen at your home. You want to be on the lookout for your kids going down the negative radicalizing content rabbit hole. And this is one thing that the research said to look out for, which I thought was really interesting, is jokes, particularly jokes that uh, if you're noticing that your kiddos are engaging with humor that dehumanizes others, um, particularly gay, transphobic, and sexist jokes. A lot of times, it's disguised as humor and it gives people with racist agendas plausible deniability because, like, hey, it's just a joke. But these jokes escalate and they really give messages to your young people. And you can stop that, right? You can have interventions when you hear them laughing at something like, hey, what's that? Oh, and like, especially if you don't like it, if you don't agree with it, hey, can you explain to me why you think that's funny? Or be honest about the fact that you don't and why, right? It's not to punish them, but it's to try to have a conversation with them, ask them an open-ended question. Again, why do they think it's funny? Have them explain it to you. You want to model the behavior you want to see also. If screen time is a huge issue in your kids' lives, I do have a family device agreement to share with you that I will. It's something to think about, right? Like, hey, if we all maybe we all should be a little bit more mindful about the time that we're spending on our screens, and or at least what we're watching, what we're listening to. And talk about it as a family. There are ways to do that. There's resources, again, that I'm going to share with you. Promote media literacy. One of the things that this presents an opportunity for is to have your kids be critical, ethical digital citizens. Teach them what it means to critically engage with media. You're already actually all doing that because you have your kids attend TKU programs where media literacy is a big part of it. but and feel good about that. You really should. But like make sure that you're, supporting that learning at home, right? Like asking them like, oh, especially about things that you catch them watching, like, hey, who do you think made that? Who do you think is the intended audience? Are they making money off of you in some way, shape, or form? That kind of thing. Like help them to understand how to interrogate what they're watching. And they're giving you resources to help you do that. And then lastly, consider consuming media with your kids, right? If they ask you to watch things with them, if they ask you to play games with them, sit down and do it. See what they're watching, engage with them. You could watch Adolescence with them. These are some questions that you could ask them if you did that. I wouldn't recommend it for anybody who is under 15 or has the maturity of a 15-year-old. But that was an age that was recommended. And these are some questions that you could go over with them, right? Like, what did you think of it? How did it make you feel? You can talk to them about cyberbullying. Do you know anybody that has been? What would you do if you knew that a friend was being cyberbullied? Like, right? It doesn't have to be about them, but getting them to talk about their friends is another way to do it. Um, but sitting down and watching things with your kiddos is a really good way to see where their head is at with things, and to talk about your values. And I wanted to talk through some of your questions, or at least point to resources. Some of you were asking about dealing with teens' addictions to devices and apps. And also, part of this question was also about anxiety, managing anxiety. A lot of kids turn to screens because of their anxiety, and it can be a way to self-soothe, understandable, or regulate. But understanding why and different ways to get them to regulate other than turning to their screens. Um, Children and Screens, which I am give you the direct link to, has these amazing tip sheets for parents. There's great books out there too, but these are tip sheets, which means that it is a one pager that gives you all these great this great information. You're gonna like go to this link and be like, oh, like any question you have about media and children, they are doing research about it. They are well funded. And I'm sorry you're going to hear my voice go, oh, when you get there, but it's a treasure trove of information, and they really break it down for you. There is a great book if your kids are into reading things that you give them. I don't know that many teenagers that are into reading books that their parents suggest, but you could read it. Clicks, How to Be Your Best Self Online is really fantastic. And it really talks about, being a reasonable, ethical digital citizen and using social media for good. And then there is a tip sheet that does speak specifically about digital addictions, and what you can do. And there's also the customizable family-friendly device agreement that you will get to help with some of that. How to start a talk, the sex ed talk with a 19-year-old that doesn't know anything on the subject, and or with someone who seems uninterested, was another question that we got from parents. The key to this is being comfortable and confident enough to respond and not react. And I realize that is a big hurdle for many of us, again, for many reasons. Most of us did not get the sex ed that we deserved. And so it is hard often to have these conversations that we want to have with our kiddos. But these are necessary, essential conversations. And I will say again, it is not a talk. It is not the talk. It is many talks. It's far too much information to cram into one. Your kid's never going to sit there through the day-long lecture that you have to give them. Amaze is an incredible organization that tailors their content to be online, free, and for parents, and to put the information that you need in digestible nuggets to give to your young people. There's a link to that in the resource that I'm sending you. They have what's called Parent Talks, where they give you keywords, sentence starters for almost any topic that you could come up with. It's fantastic. There's also videos for teenagers. It does say, sorry, for your kids. It does say that it's for adolescents, but I watch these videos. I love them. It's kind of like watching Cartoon Network, which a lot of our kiddos watch. And also the information that they're giving for adolescents, it spans a lifetime. I think it's just important that you get the info and get the correct, accurate information. It doesn't matter who it's geared towards. And in some cases, it might help some of us who really need to make things simple and straightforward for the kids in our lives. Elevatus is an online training that takes into account sexuality and developmental disability. I took this training. It is a 4-module online training. It does cost $47. I will say I thought it was worth it. But it is specifically about talking to kids with developmental disabilities about sexual health, how to start, how to talk through, or augment behaviors that are not meant for the public. Um, it's really great. How do you talk to a young person with autism about being safe and healthy? And I was assuming this was really about digital safety. So that was the perspective I took since we're coming here tonight around this topic. Again, Amaze has a digital and media literacy toolkit that I've linked to in the resource. It's fantastic. Gives you a lot of things to think through, talk to your kids about, clue them into. But then there's also Children and Screens. One of their tip sheets is specifically about online safety for youth, and they really have some great suggestions about safety. And one of them, they have actual recommendations for things that go beyond like parental controls on media that are really helpful and that I recommend. Um, and let's see. How to deal with teens and entertainment. So I wasn't sure what exactly we were talking about with entertainment. So I took the liberty of thinking like, well, maybe we're talking about porn, and also maybe we're talking about video games, and both things come under online content, and both things can and should be dealt with. Amaze, as one of their parent talks, has one specifically about porn, and it is again a guide to talking to your kids about it, and different resources that can help you. These are short videos, by the way. I'm not giving you long things to read or look at, but they're really helpful. And video gaming is another one, healthy versus problematic gaming. Again, my suggestion with gaming is to play with your kids if they ask you to, especially. It was one of the things that my nephews growing up would always want me to play with them. And I always had this rule that like I would never play like shoot 'em games with them. I was like, no, that's outside of my values. But I also wasn't their parent, so I didn't have to see what they were watching. But in part of me it would have been a great moment to sit with them though and talk to them about why they like to play it as you're playing with them. It's also kind of a cool moment for your kids to know something more than you do, and to maybe teach you, as you're trying something new. And just, sit there watching and doing something that your kids really enjoy doing. But then be able to have a conversation with them about it from a place of knowing as opposed to a place of assumptions is really important. Or it's a way in anyway. So these are some things to think about. I think it's also really important to think about helping your young people to understand the difference between entertainment and education. Like movies and TV and games are not meant to educate your kids. They are meant to tell stories. They are meant to sell fiction, sometimes sell products, right? It's not meant to have them leave and go off with skills, like in educational pieces. Some games are educational, don't get me wrong, but that's not generally the purpose of a lot of them. And it's important to have your kids understand the difference, and it's part of media literacy. This is the resource that you're going to get. So it has links again to all these things. Again, parental controls are a big part of it. And that was what I planned for tonight. And so I'm happy to answer questions. I'm happy to dig into other things with you more. Um, please let me know where you're at right now. Yes, these are the places where I am. And definitely sending you the resource and that I made, which spoke to a lot of the questions that you had and some of the things that and a lot of the things that we discussed, and also the template for the family device agreement. Whether you use it or not, or it needs to be an actual like agreement that people sign, it could just be a conversation. I just think it's helpful sometimes to see how other people are having these conversations and approaching these things.